Welcome to Books versus Movies, the podcast where I try to answer the age-old question, is the book really always better than the movie? Today we will be discussing Erasure by Percival Everett and its 2023 adaptation, American fiction. And yes, I said we because I have two of my book club friends here with me, Chantel and Raymond.
Yay!
Yay.
Thanks for inviting us, Lluvia. I love the concept of your podcast and the book, which is better, the book or the movie? It's very exciting. And I feel like I'm in great company with Raymond and you, so I'm happy to be here.
Yay,
Me
well,
too.
thank
Me
you.
too. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Um, so I wanted to invite both of you because Chantel, you are such a Percival Everett fangirl. So I knew I needed to discuss this with you.
Mhm.
And Raymond, you are just one of the smartest people I know. Um, and yeah, I wanted to get your opinion as well. Um, so I started off reading the book, like reading it, and then there's a long wait list at my library for it, so I couldn't recheck it out. So I had to finish it with the audiobook. I don't do as well with audio as I do like physically reading it, so I'm scared I missed some things. So it's another reason I wanted to bring you both on here and discuss.
Can I ask you a question? Who did the reading in the audio?
His name is Sean Crisden, who was great.
Never.
All right. I don't know who
Yeah.
that is.
I don't do a lot of audiobooks, so I wouldn't know. So
I just know like the main dude who reads like so many like books is I think his name is Dean something or whatever, but he's read so many like books by like Black men authors. He's like done a lot of Colson Whitehead's books and like anyway, I just thought it might have been the same person, but then again, this book was released in like 2001, so of course it would have been someone different, I guess.
To be fair, it could have been recorded like last year. I don't know. I didn't look up when the one I listened to was recorded.
Mm.
Um, cool. So Chantel, why don't you tell us a little bit about Erasure and what you thought of it?
Oh man, what did I think? I loved it. You know, Percival Everett is the kind of smart that makes me like hot under the collar. Like, and I know when he said fangirl, I was like, yeah, that's completely me. Every book of his that I read, I'm like, bro, you are doing something so different. And I don't have like a long-standing history with him. Like I just started reading him when The Trees came out a few years ago. I think Raymond read it first, and then I read it after, and I thought it was really, really good. And I thought, wow, this guy's like doing something that's so different. And then only to find out that he had like tons and tons of books that had already come out. And I was like, oh my God, I gotta backtrack because he has a whole catalog. So then I heard about the movie coming out for American fiction, and people started talking about that it's based on this book, Erasure. And then when I read it, I was like blown away, blown away. I thought it was like his thought process is so intriguing. Like he has this ability to capture like a certain kind of man while trying to undo stereotypes, but also like not in a hotep way. Like anyway, it's very his ability to let things breathe and give things space to like manifest in a book is like when you follow it along while you're reading, it gets you excited and you're like, what's happening? What is going on right now? I found myself asking myself that question so many times. So I love the book. I thought it was brilliant.
Thank you, Chantel. What about you, Raymond?
yeah, so I'm new to Percival Everett as well. Read The Trees. I read this as a part. So this was actually Erasure was my other book club's pick for February of this year. Um, and I actually liked it less than The Trees. Not to say it's not a bad book. It's just it wasn't. There were some things in the book that kind of like couldn't really follow. Um, some plot, well, not necessarily plot, but like the structure of it, just how the story is told in some places. Um, but for the general aspect of what it's about, middle-aged author can't really get his what he really wants to write published, and then he writes this stereotypical quote unquote black novel that makes him famous and all this stuff. And as someone, I think you might have, one of you all just said, you know, storyline's not that old, like it's 20 years old, but I mean, it's still kind of relevant even, 20 years later. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm kind of curious what about the structural aspects of the book were that you struggled with, because I have to agree with you, but I will say it's something that I didn't struggle with initially. I started struggling with it once I switched over to audio, and that's kind of when I had a little bit. So I don't know if it's like, if for me, if it was like the structure of it, or if it was just the structure of it combined with the audio that kind of made it a little bit confusing to me.
I think for me, so like the general story of him and his family, that was pretty straightforward. The book within a book was pretty straightforward. What I had trouble with was like these strange little, and I know Chantel loved this part of the book because we talked about this one time, but these like weird little vignettes that to me, I'm like, what's this about? Like, can you tell me like why this was put in there? And some aspects I kind of knew. So like there was an example where there was like some references to some Nazis. And I'm like, why is this in this book right now? Like it has nothing to do with the main part of the story. But it had something to do with the theme of and the title of the book. But I think for me as a reader, I'm just like, I don't need to hear that piece. I just need to hear like straight up storyline, and that's just me. But Chantel, I know you got
Yeah, well,
thoughts.
because you know what? I love those elements of the book. I thought it felt like scenes of madness. It felt like just um you know what I loved about it? I loved those scenes because I felt like they informed so much of the rest of the book. I felt like they informed his overall thought process into the type of narrative he's trying to construct. I thought that those scenes specifically portrayed like various feelings. Like there was so much there was like shame and like frustration in those scenes. There's like the scene with like that random scene where it's like almost like a game show. It was like madness. Um it felt like the main character Monk was like overextending himself, that like when you reach to a point where you're trying to do something and people are not seeing it for what it is, so then it starts to infect your subconscious. Like I felt like that's what was happening, and I thought that was such a great way to capture it. And just like like his own rage towards we lives in the ghetto. Like I felt like his rage towards the book like came back around into him, and like that's where you got these like vignettes. So I really love those parts, even though they felt really arbitrary. And when I was reading them too, I was like, what the hell are you doing? Like, what is going on? But then I was like, when I started to get past that part and like enter into like some more of the story with his mom, I felt like it perfectly mirrored the whole dementia piece and the whole like losing touch with reality piece. And I felt like all of those things played really well on each other. So that's why I loved the book. I thought like I've read 3 Percival Everett novels so far, and this one is still my number one.
I love that perspective, because I'm a lot like Raymond. I really, really hate when books, like, they're telling a story and then you switch to like a book within a book. That's just an example. Or like in this case, these little vignettes. So Yeah, the way you explained it, that makes perfect sense, and it wasn't something I had considered. Um, so I'm really curious what you, if you either of you have any thoughts of on my pathology, because we do get like the full book in the book. For me, I just couldn't help. It felt like a retelling of Native Son, except that he's working for a rich Black family as opposed to a rich white family. Um, and I'm sure that was very, very intentional. So I'm just curious what, if either of you have any thoughts on that.
It was hilarious. The very first page, I had a total laughing fit because I just could not get over the dialogue and as the title is my pathology, the pathology of everything. And um, and like you said, Lluvia, with it being a sort of a parody of Native Son, that part just made it even more interesting because like knowing how that story is and um the madness that he put in this book to make it even like I even like as I was reading it, I was just like, how's this book gonna end? I really I wanted more actually. That's the crazy part. But yeah, so that's my kind of feelings on my pathology.
I thought it was hilarious too. I found myself like dying, just laughing so hard throughout that whole book. I was like, and the fact that he really gave it like enough time. Like it wasn't like, oh, this is like the hint of the book. Here's like 3 chapters. It was like the whole book in there.
Mm-hmm.
How absurd and just like Maury Pavish, Jerry Springer, violence, like, and it's so funny because if you think back to like when it was written, like you're also that's a height of those types of shows. So I was just like, bro, he's going in with and this like just the absurd like dialogue and just the but also like even though it was like hilarious and absurd, it was also there's so much pain and like just like like just the pain and violence. And I thought that even though he was trying to like be like to parody it, he actually touched upon something that it's no wonder why it made it huge, because he actually touched something logical even though he hated it and he was trying to make fun of it. So I thought that was interesting, and the fact that like you're trying to like diss this other book for being such a um for being such a like a you're trying to like diss this other book for being so subversive, like just terrible. But at the same time, like you're mad as like Monk is mad as a person who is feeling like he's being pigeonholed. He's pigeonholing others and not allowing space for like he's making everything into if it's not this standard, it's not good. And I think that like I thought it was a very interesting topic on like Black people are not a monolith.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was hilarious. I really laughed just like Raymond through that whole first couple pages. I was like, this dude is tripping. Like he's tripping.
Yeah, I will say my pathology is one of the few books within a books that didn't bother me because it was just, yeah, it was hilarious. Like you just look at the page and it's just like F you from the top to the bottom. Um, and it's funny because after every F you, he says like F you, I said F you, he said F you, and it's yeah, it's just funny to read that. Um, so I'm curious what both of you thought of American Fiction.
I enjoyed it. I actually liked it better than the book, and from my standpoint. Although there's some things that they did, there's some things they left out in the book that I wish was in the movie. But I think this goes back to what I was saying earlier about they didn't have all those little vignette stuff that was having a that I was having a problem with in the novel. Um, and I think for the movie, it fleshed out a little bit more of Monk and his family, which they did. He does, that's done well in the book. But I guess it was to me, it felt like the movie made it more kind of the relationship, family stuff that maybe the book was more of the literary piece of it. I don't know if I'm getting that right, but that's kind of my thinking of it right now.
Yeah, I think that it streamlined the story a lot more, the film. And I thought I personally speaking, I still like the book better than the movie. Like I did enjoy the movie, and I think I enjoyed the movie because of the caliber of actors that were in the movie. And like Tracy Ellis Ross is amazing. I feel like the mom was a great and Sterling K. Brown. Like everybody was good. Like even Jeffrey Wright, all the acting was so great that it made the movie really enjoyable. But in terms of like capturing the essence of the book, I think it did a good job, but it missed a lot. And I think that there was like a level of madness and history surrounding the family and the father and stuff that we didn't really get to see play out as much as I wanted to.
Yeah, it, it's one of those things that obviously like American fiction is based on the book, but it's also just so different at the same time. Um, so I always struggle to compare the adaptations when it's that different from its source material, but it's also interesting to see why they made the changes that they did. And I know that people had been wanting to make an adaptation of Erasure for years, but Percival Everett was kind of unsure. And then finally he approved this one, and he was a-okay with all the changes that were made. So that being said, Chantel, I want to know which change made you the most upset?
Them not bringing in, I think the change that made me the most upset was definitely them not bringing in the tertiary characters. Like, we definitely needed to, like, I feel like that was a hitting point of the book. Like for example, the side sister with her like living, who actually is living that hood ass life, like them not bringing her in and like illustrating that it's not just like we are not necessarily the sole purveyors of this kind of lifestyle or this whole experience, you know. And then I think that that made me the most upset because I was like, we needed that. That was a part of the book we needed in the movie. You know what I mean? Like we really got more of like the brother and his like miserable like I'm gay now, doing my thing now vibe. And we also, another thing that made me really upset was um how they killed off the sister. Like they flattened that character to like they made her into a pancake. You get what I'm saying? Like,
Mhm.
and she's such a dynamic individual. She had so much like her job alone, the fact that she like put herself on the line every day, like the fact that she stayed home to take care of her mom in that way before these guys came back, the fact that like it had so like that character had so much to say about Black women in general and like how much we are willing to do and sacrifice and give and promote to a family that I'm really upset that they just like, oh, she had a chest pain. Ooh, bro, that killed me. I was like, what are y'all doing? What's going on over there? Like, y'all need to straighten that up. And I know that it probably would have made the film longer, but they need to put that back in the film.
No, I don't even think it would have made it longer. Like, and I think the reason why I was upset too about that is like she was in, a doctor in a women's hospital, and then especially with like what's going on now with like abortion being limited in the country. Like, why wouldn't they done that? Like, that would have been a good scene that, well, not good, but a tragic scene that would be a little bit that would have like I would have more meaning
For
like it did in
sure.
the book. Like it did in the book. So yeah, I agree with Chantel on that. I also agree that the Secret Sister, we were robbed by not putting her in the film because, as Chantel said, she actually did live in the ghetto, as the other book was called. Um, and then the stuff about like the father and his extramarital affairs, which leads up to the sister, that was like lightly touched on. Like, oh yeah, we know dad was stepping out, but then that's it. Like we didn't
Mhm.
even there was no examination of that in the movie. Um, this is a small point, but I didn't realize this. Somebody else told me this. But Jeffrey Wright was great in the movie, but he is not the description of Monk in the book. So the monk in the book is a darker skinned black man. And
Ooh, I didn't know that.
yeah.
I don't recall that. I think I just skipped past that. Anyway, go on.
Look, someone told me too. They were like, it was in the first chapter. I said, I didn't recognize. Like, and I went back and I saw like it literally says it. And so, and somebody was saying, I forget who I was listening to, another podcast was saying something about like what that may have, like that changes his story too, about his, skin tone, Jeffrey Wright skin tone, I guess. Uh, but anyway, yeah. So that's those two or three things, and there's something else. Um, I think that's it that I can think of. But yeah, definitely this big thing about the sister, the um, that first part we just mentioned about, and I'm just blanking. But yeah,
What do you think, Lluvia? What did you think? What was missing? What made you upset?
Um, I w- I feel the same way about the sister's death. So for those listening that haven't read or seen the film, in the book, his sister works, as Raymond mentioned, in a women's health clinic where they do abortions, and she actually dies because like these anti radical anti-abortion people come in and shoot her. Um, and in the film, she gets a heart attack while she's driving. I think that's what it is, right? um,
They're
and
sitting at like a restaurant, I think, and she just like has a heart attack at the restaurant.
right, I remember she was sitting. I don't know why I thought she was driving, but yes, restaurant. She was sitting down. That's the important thing. Yeah, they were just
That is the important thing.
yeah.
yeah, he's doing something non-heroic when the heart attack came. Yes.
Yes. Yes, exactly. So that's how she dies. And yeah, when I read that in the book, I was also very curious as to why they changed it. And the only thing I could think of, and this is just complete and total speculation because I was not in the writer's room or anything like that, but I know that lately there has been a lot of uh, talk, rightly so, about Black trauma and specifically Black trauma for Black women. So I'm just wondering if they, to keep it a lot lighter, and because the film definitely has more of a comedic tone, that's the only thing I can think of is they changed it um, to not have like such a traumatic Black woman death.
That's a
But I don't know.
possibility. I think it's a possibility, but I also think that like it's possible that they just didn't want to distract from the centralized story.
Mm.
I feel like in the film they tried to keep it so streamlined to like Monk, and then like it felt play by play by play by play. Like they didn't really feel like, I feel like everything in the film could have been a little bit more like gelled together. Even
Mhm.
when he goes into his rage about writing my pathology, it's like he goes into this room, he sits down, he starts to have these visions, and then Keith David is there, and like, it's just crazy, right? And I feel like in the book there was more, like a little bit more build up and like
Mhm.
a little bit more stewing. So I don't know. That's just my speculations.
Yeah, that, I mean, I feel like yours makes a little bit more sense than mine.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that could be it. I just feel like what you're saying, Lluvia, but I think also it's just like they could have just not killed her. Like
True.
if they
Facts,
wanted,
facts. She didn't have to die. Like she could have
right,
been.
like that would have been an ultimate like change in the net. Just keep her in the story. Because I mean she had a good Tracy Ellis Ross's character had a very good role for what she was, the 10, 15 minutes she was in
Hmm.
the movie. Why not just keep her in the storyline? Like,
Yeah.
That's also very true. Yeah,
yeah.
because
I,
I mean, mhm.
to be honest with you, you know who they could have got rid of? Not killed, but like scrapped altogether in film. They should have just got rid of the girlfriend.
Yeah.
Excuse me? How so?
Look, okay, let me say, I don't feel like she was more of a central character in the book than the movie. I think
Mhm.
the girlfriend could have. I'm saying if you kept the sister and then just got rid of the girlfriend character, maybe the sister could have performed some of that same kind of uh, storyline about like her reading my pathology and was like, oh, this book is good, mom. Because they were bonding about that in the beginning of the movie about, you know, your your book has changed my life. I use it as a doorstop, right? And so they could have played around with that by just they kept the sister in there. And she could have been a foil for whether or not the book that he ends up writing later on is like how it's seen by an everyday person or something like
That's interesting.
Yeah, I feel like they
that.
flattened the girlfriend too. Yeah, they flattened all, like the film flattened pretty much all the women in the film. I
I
find.
will agree with that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And then to your second point, Raymond, I saw the film first, and this is when I was like physically reading it, and even you mentioning that he's supposed to be a darker skinned black man did not enter my consciousness. So I'm glad you brought that up because I love Jeffrey Wright, but yeah, that would change the trajectory of the story. Um, so I'm curious if you have anyone in mind, or you, Chantel, with this in mind, who you would cast instead of Jeffrey Wright.
It's easy.
Okay, let's hear it.
Switch the brothers.
Yeah, facts. That's what I was just about to say. Because I'm like, if it makes sense, they should have just switched the brothers. Like Sterling K. Brown could have played Monk, and Jeffrey Wright could have played the debaucherous brother doing the most.
He could have, because I feel like he's played a role like that before. He would have, I can't remember what it was, but I feel he could have done it. Jeffrey Wright could have done it. Yeah.
I like that. I was fully expecting like a full on casting change, but I like that we're keeping the same actors because I love them both, and just switching roles. So I'm here for that. Um, I'm trying to think if is there any changes that you did like? It's okay if there isn't.
Hmm.
Any changes to in the film that was different
Yeah.
from the book.
I did like that there was more of the author of We's Lives in the Ghetto, I like that she had a bigger role in the film. Yeah,
Yeah.
I do wish we had more of the sister and the girlfriend being a little bit more important, but I do like that at least that author had we got to see more of her and the dynamic between her and Monk.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like the fact that they included the whole knocking him down a peg in the final like face off between them two. Like that was good.
I wanted more of that. Like I felt like when the other lady judge came in and interrupted the conversation, like I was like, when I wanted them to say leave, and then so they could continue on with their debating because I thought the points that they were hitting were very interesting, um, and which is something that wasn't in the book, right? And I thought it was a very fascinating discussion between them about the nature of like writing and these voices and these stories that need to be that should or shouldn't be told and this, that, and the other. So that could have been like I could have had more of that. Or I could have had that in this book. That would even probably made the book better for me.
Um, all right, cool. So we are running out of time on my Zoom. But is there any last minute things that you just have to get off your chest about either the book or the film before we get into our final votes?
I want to say one. Oh, go ahead, Raymond. You were ready. Go.
I was just gonna say Leslie Uggams, who played the mom in the movie, deserves all her flowers.
Yes.
I'm 80 years old, and when she was getting down in
Wait,
the
she's 80?
yeah, she's 80 something. Yeah,
She
yeah,
looks great. I was not expecting her to be 80.
hmm yeah. So anyway, that's all I have to say.
So what I was gonna say was basically that I thought the film at the ending, when like I think in the end he just jumps in the car and they leave the filming lot, right?
Mhm.
I thought that that was really great. I thought like it was such a good way to, I mean, I love the ending of the book when it's like, egads, I'm on television or whatever. That was like the dopest ending to me. I thought, oh my God, he's so funny and he's just so smart. Like that was such, because I kept wondering how is this book gonna end, but like the fact that that's what happened, I was like, this he nailed it. And them leaving the lot in the film, I'm sorry, I'm ruining it for anybody who's never seen it. I'm so sorry. Like
All right.
you gotta throw a spoiler on there or cut this part off.
I think people know by now that if you're listening to this podcast, there's spoilers.
Okay. But I thought that that part was so great because it's like I thought it highlighted the fact that it's just fiction. Like you could be anything. You could do whatever you want. You don't have to die. You don't have to get shot up by these agents. Like, and I think that that's just a highlight of like the whole thing, like the diversity needed, understanding different things. Like, you know, we don't have to go out like this every single time. It's a book, you can write anything. Just like Raymond said that we could have had Tracy Ellis Ross character still going. She could have still been in the film.
Yes. So we know Raymond's vote. His vote is for the film. And we know Chantel's vote. Her vote is for the book. I'm gonna have to go with Raymond on this one. I did like the film a little bit more than I liked the book.
Okay, that's all right. Okay. Well, I'm still going for the book. I thought it was so well executed. But I feel like I would skew that way every single time. So I'm terrible that way. Like when it comes to films, I'm like, it's never gonna be as good as the book.
That's okay. But I agree with you for the most part. So, but yeah, I think for me, it was the acting that kind of pushed it over the edge, and the ridiculousness of that ending in the film. Yeah, I think that's what it.
That ending, it was something. It was definitely, that could have got me over to the film side. I was like, the ending's good.
Raymond, do you have any thoughts on the ending of either or both?
I did not like the ending of the book because I don't like open-ended endings and like what does this mean? I had to look up that little Latin phrase at the end and still didn't understand what it was saying. And then the movie was a little I liked it. It was fine. You know, it was better than the ending of the book. Yes.
Chantel's rolling her eyes over here.
Rolling my eyes. I'm rolling my eyes.
I'm standing in my truth.
Okay.
I love that. So thank you both for being here. I really enjoyed this discussion. I love Chantel's passion and Raymond, all the points you brought up. And yes, so we leave it up to you. Chantel says, read the book.
I do. Thanks, Lluvia, for having us. It was fun.
Yeah, thank you.